So here's the second example. They're telling us a nutritional study was comparing caloric intake of adolescents in rural and urban areas. Random sample of ninth graders from one high school in a rural and one in an urban. They kept records, and this back-to-back stem plot displays the number of calories of foods consumed per kilogram of body weight for each student on the day. So, write a few sentences comparing the distribution of the daily caloric intake of the ninth graders in rural with the urban. All right, here we go. SOC-V, well, I'll make this my urban, and then SOC-V again, and this can be my rural. So let's go through these and just write down the characteristics, and then we can compare them. So with the stem plot, we're just trying to decide what the shape is as far as is it symmetric or is it skewed. So let's start with rural. This is where you can turn your head to the right and kind of look. How does it look? Well, I mean, I know I have that little 51 there, but for the most part, that's pretty symmetric. So I'm going to say roughly or approximately symmetric for rural. Now for urban, this is where it's always a little bit tricky on the double stem and leaf plot. So you've got to turn your head to the left, and you can kind of, if you draw it, okay, I can see there's a tail going this way. So it looks like my tail's on the left, but remember, look at your stems. The tail's actually going towards the higher numbers. So that means what I've got here is one that is right skewed. If it goes towards lower numbers, it's left skewed. If it goes towards higher numbers, it's right skewed. Always a little tricky on those sort of back-to-back stem plots. Now, how about outliers? I don't see any outliers with my urban, so none. And I don't see any with my rural either, so none again. So this time I don't have any outliers to talk about. Now for center, since my urban was skewed, I would want to use the median. Now there are 20 data points here, so I could count up to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So between 31 and 33, that is my midpoint. I need to average together since I had an even number of data. So that's going to give me median of 32. And then on the right side, now because this was symmetric, this is when we would use the mean. And I can't just count the way I can with the median. It's not as convenient for me. But at the same time, if it's symmetric, the median and the mean should be pretty similar. So you've got a couple options here. If you've got the time, if you think you have the time, you can enter them in your calculator and get the mean. I'm just going to find what the median is and then just say the mean is approximately or around that amount, because I know they should be similar if it's symmetric. So I'll just count up 10 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So between 40 and 42. So the mean is approximately 41. So by saying that, they'll be able to recognize that I understood when I talk about symmetric data, I should also talk about the mean. It's okay that I didn't figure out the exact mean amount because it should be around the same as the median for symmetric data. Finally, the variability. Stem and leaf, it's very easy for us to get the exact range. So my biggest data point is 42. And I'm going to subtract my smallest one, which is 26. So that's going to give me 16. And for my rural side, my biggest is 51 and my smallest is 32. So that's going to give me range of 19. So now that I've got all this listed out, let's see if there's anything similar. The shapes are not similar, they're different. It's true that it's similar that they both don't have outliers. The median of 32 is much less than the center here, the mean of 41. The range of my urban was smaller than the range of my rural. So that was also a less than. Now I've got enough that I can write my sentences out. So let me just go ahead and start and remember to put my context in there. So the distribution for caloric intake at urban school was right skewed, while daily caloric intake at rural school was roughly symmetric. All right, so I addressed the shape for both of them and I addressed the context in my first sentence. Neither distribution had outliers. And now here's where I can get my comparisons in. So the distribution for urban school had a median of 32, which is less than the mean of the rural school. Extend my page at 41. And again, you can phrase that however you want as long as you're making the comparison and you have the numbers in there. Talked about SOC, now let me talk about my V. So similarly, so it's less than for this. So I'm going to say the range at the urban school was less than the rural school, and then I'll just put 16 is less than 19. Whew, it's a lot to go through and it's a lot of writing. So let me just make sure the distribution for caloric intake. Okay, I talked about our context. Here it was right skewed, while here it was roughly symmetric. Okay, I talked about both the shapes. Neither distribution had outliers. I hit outliers for both. The distribution for urban school had a mean of 32, which is less than the mean of the rural school at 41. Talked about that and compared them. And then the range at the urban school was less than the rural school. 16 is less than 19. So I went through SOC-V and then I actively compared every part of that to each other. I know these comparison questions, they're not quick, but they do come up on the exam quite often, so we do need to understand what we need to write to get full credit for these comparison questions. So now you've got some practice, and just please contact me if you have any questions.